we're so glad you joined us for the August Lymphedema Patient Roundtable. We know that you are logging on right now and joining in. We feel so honored that you chose to spend an hour of your month with us, and we hope to make it inspiring and educational. I'm Brenda Viola, and I work for Lympha Press, and it is my honor to introduce some of the people at our roundtable. Catherine Rosenberg, she is a primary lymphedema. No.
Secondary.
Yes,
secondary.
Because cancer survivor and thriver with lymphedema. We always love, you want to talk a little bit about being your own advocate tonight. We're so glad you're with us, Catherine Rosenberg. Mary Castleberg, primary lymphedema patient, Lympha Press compression therapy consultant, and always brings great information and candor and vulnerability to the table. We love you, Mary. Thank you for being here tonight. Veteran fighting lymphedema, Kelly Bell. He has a special graphic behind him because he is going to be a speaker at the Ketogenic Solutions for Lipedema and Lymphedema conference that's coming up in October. So we'll definitely talk to him about that. My colleague and pal, Alexa Ercolano, thank you. I have my emphatic lymphatic button on. If you follow the Lymphy Life, Alexa Ercolano, you can get swag like this if you're really nice to her. And she's also a great part of the Lympha Press team, a primary lymphedema patient, and very knowledgeable on the topic. We're so glad you're here with us. Amanda Sobey from Canada. And I love her backdrop. It always makes me feel like at least I got close to working out. Actually, I did work out today, Amanda. So you'd be very proud of me. She brings a unique perspective of management and self-care. She is a motivational speaker and health coach, and we always love your perspective, Amanda. We're so glad you're here. And now you can find her at Lymphy Queen on Instagram. We'll talk about that too. I always love my dear friend, Angela Jones, who is here with us today, who continues to make me hungry with her posts on Facebook. And you are an amazing cook. I want to come to dinner at your house. And I'm so glad that you are posting on social so people can follow you, Angela Jones. Lovely to have you here. A lipo lymphedema patient, so you bring that perspective, and a big fan of Lympha Press, and we absolutely love that about you. And then my buddy Kim Ayala. It's so good. I missed you. I feel like I only get to see you at the roundtables anymore. I hope you're doing well. I see that you're wearing your Lympha Press badge. Those of you who know Cam from The Bachelorette or Bachelor in Paradise may also know him as your local Lympha Press representative, a primary lymphedema patient, and an advocate for the community. We're so glad that you're with us tonight, Cam.
Thank you.
So without further ado, I'm going to be fancy smancy, and I'm going to put a poll question out here for everybody. And this is about the way we perceive our lymphedema. And I'm going to launch this question, and I want you to weigh in. Panelists, you can weigh in as well. Do you ever feel self-conscious about your lymphedema? Alexa, you posted about this on your Lymphy Life Instagram page. What provoked you to speak about this?
Well, I saw this beautiful piece of artwork. This artist painted these three women, and they have very enlarged arms and hands in the painting, and it was very evocative. And to me, I mean, I always like to find hidden lymphes in artwork and kind of project our experience onto visual art. And it reminded me a lot of how I often feel when I'm having those days where I'm out in public and I feel like, gosh, everyone must be staring at my leg. They must be looking at it. They must be, thinking, what the heck is wrong with her? Blah, blah, blah. And a lot of times that's in my head. And I think we are our own worst critics because we live with this every day. We are constantly aware of it, physically and mentally. It's a literal weight that we carry and have to kind of drag around. So when I saw that painting, it made me think about the ways that we think that we're perceived in the world and how oftentimes that's at odds with the people, especially those who know us and love us. They don't really notice our swelling. It's not conditional based on how, big our legs or our arms are. They love us for us and everything we offer. So I wanted to kind of explore that and also share some tips for when I am in that kind of headspace, things that I do to sort of ground myself and get in a more positive spot, whether it's writing, calling a friend, looking at the hashtags on Instagram and seeing everybody else in our community who's thriving and surviving with this. I find that really inspiring. Just kind of get myself into a healthier sort of mindset and remind myself that it's not just, we're more than our swelling, it's a part of us, but.
Drop the mic right there. We are more than our swelling. That is huge. And I think this is a great topic to start our conversation off with tonight. Mm-hmm. By the way, I want to say to all of you who have logged on, feel free to put questions or comments in the chat or the Q&A. 83% of the people who voted said yes. They feel self-conscious about their lymphedema. And if anything, we hope that this community that we've created here at Lympha Press and so many other different communities can encourage you that you are more than your swelling. Does anybody want to weigh in on this topic? And I didn't mean to cut you off, Alexa.
No, that's fine.
People might want to say something about how did you surmount, the self-consciousness may be real. How do you surmount it? Go ahead, Mary, and then I'll take you.
I was actually talking to someone who's a fellow Lymphy about this, and I think it's important to note that even though I am extremely confident now, 95% of the time with my lymphedema, everyone still has times where it creeps up, and so perfect example is I had cellulitis last month and I was at a restaurant and had to elevate my leg, and it was a really tiny restaurant. So I was, me having another chair was making it harder for the servers to get around. And, I think that the best way to view it is to, just take our journey and think about how much we've been through, and people who are staring, they don't know our story. They don't know what we've been through. But if they ask, then we now have an opportunity to educate.
That's really good. That old song. Now I'm dating myself. Kelly, maybe you can help me out with this, or Angela.
Thanks.
I always feel like somebody's watching me.
Oh, I heard that this afternoon.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
And honestly, all right, true confessions, everyone. I went to my godson's wedding and had hair, makeup, gown, the whole nine. The next morning, everybody was meeting for breakfast. And for the first time in public, I went out without makeup on. And it was freeing to realize nobody cares. Nobody cares. Do they care? Angela, do they care?
Oh, who cares?
Who cares, really? Right? I know that's a silly example, but everybody, whether you have lymphedema or not, everybody has something that they're so self-conscious about.
Yeah.
And nobody else really cares. Cam, did you want to say something about this self-consciousness and feeling like your swelling is something everybody's looking at?
Yeah. And I just think, so personally, I was not always public about my lymphedema. I was basically a closet lymphy, if you will, for many, many years. Like I hadn't been public about it until end of 2019. So this is still something new to me. And when you go almost 18 years without ever talking about it to like now, literally I talk about it every day, because whether it's social media or work, it definitely can be empowering, but I know not every patient has that same lifestyle or that same opportunity. So just realize that it's going to take some time. And just because the swelling is a symptom doesn't mean it's a characteristic of who you are. And the people who actually love you, they're going to love all of you. And if you got a little bit of swelling, that's just more love, right? More of you to love. More to love. That's awesome. We need to get t-shirts. More swelling, more to love. Except the Lympha Press helps to get rid of the swelling. So, Amanda, what would you like to say about this topic?
I would like to chime in and just say, I think when you get when you get diagnosed immediately, you feel lost and you feel hopeless, and it takes you a while to figure out your rhythm and to learn those tools to understand that there are things that you can do to combat the swelling. And eventually your lymphedema diagnosis is very forefront in the life. Like, it's very devastating. It's very all consuming. But I think if you watch such amazing examples, as you see the panelists here thriving with their lymphedema, you start to embrace the journey, because I think with your self-care and your self-love, you just end up realizing that it doesn't define you. So just keep going and just know that there are things that you can do.
That's awesome. I love it. Go ahead, Catherine.
So one of the things I was going to say was that you don't just drop everything and think that you can't do it anymore just because you get this diagnosis, because in reality, you won't know if you can or can't do it unless you try. And it's super important to really try. And if you can't do it on Monday, doesn't mean that you can't do it by Friday or like a month or a year from now. You never know until you repeatedly try to see what you can and can't do, and things change. So with the change, you have to adjust.
I think for most human beings, this journey to self-acceptance and self-love is like foundational. And everybody's got something. And I think I said this at the Lipolymphedema Roundtable recently. You're flawed, but you're awesome. You're flawsome. So embrace your flawsomeness and rock those compression garments and your Lympha press and be proud of who you are. We are here to encourage you and support you. That's what the Lymphedema Patient Roundtable is all about. Nasreen Starner, we are so delighted that you were able to join us as well. Nasreen is a certified lymphedema therapist. She is an expert on so many topics. And actually something came up that I've been noticing on social media a lot lately. People posting photos that look like cellulitis with the caption, "Should I go to the doctor about this?" And I can almost feel the entire lymphedema community screaming, "Oh yes, do not play around with cellulitis." Could you speak about cellulitis for a minute for us, Nasreen? And I'm so sorry, Mary, that you actually had to deal with this past month.
Yeah, I'd love to speak about it, but I want to say I'm just so proud of all of you guys for supporting this community that I just work with every day. And I can definitely tell you, they need advocates like you. They need people who have their back and are saying it's okay and getting more support. But cellulitis, is the skin infection. It's often strep or staph infections. With lymphedema, it's a protein-rich edema. Protein, unfortunately, is what bacteria likes to eat. So you are a little bit more susceptible to infections. We know that the lymphatic system, even if you have these infections maybe low, on your hand or on your foot, or, we know that whole lymphatic system is very interconnected, where your entire body is going to help to filter out any of these waste products from your body, whether it's this bacteria. What unfortunately we don't want to happen is we don't want, where maybe the cellulitis is just in one specific area of the skin, we don't want these lymphatic vessels to take the fluid up to your internal system and cause you to have some sepsis, because that's what can easily happen and what we've seen before if it's left untreated. I know if you're unsure, going to a lymphedema therapist or going to your doctor, they can easily detect, because it looks a little bit different than a typical lymphedema, and we can send you on to the doctor.
Thank you so much for that. Please don't play around. If you even think it might be, go get it attended to, nip it in the bud, because we don't want this condition to progress. When did you see the first signs, Mary?
So this was actually my fourth time of getting cellulitis. And so the first time I ended up being hospitalized because I didn't know what it was. And every time since then, I have been able to notice the things you look for are redness, heat, and pain are going to be your big three. Sometimes, it looks different for me time after time. This time I've just felt weird. I felt like my calf was hurting and I didn't know if I had scraped myself. And I was actually day one of vacation.
Oh no,
Took my
bummer.
stocking off. Yep, took my stocking off. And it looked like I had kind of like a rash on my calf. And by the time I got to the pharmacy, my foot was super, super swollen and very painful. So it gets worse very quickly. So the faster, the things I look for is it hot? Is there any new redness? And then when you put weight on it, does it hurt? So the second that you start feeling like something's off, your body so well. Every lymphedema patient will learn to know their body so well. And you don't want it to get worse, because then you're, not only your bed rest and not having any fun for a while, but it can be pretty dangerous if you don't take care of it.
Yeah, I do know, I don't have the stat offhand. I know Ed Davis is out there and he's been known to text statistics to us during the roundtable, but I know that the use of the Lympha press has helped to reduce the reoccurrence of cellulitis. And it is an important tool to manage your lymphedema. We had an anonymous attendee out here who said she's long been afraid of cellulitis. She wonders, and maybe Nasreen, I could yield to you on this, if it could be diagnosed through telemedicine. Everybody's extra cautious right now with the spike in COVID situation, and people may not be as willing to go to a doctor. However, if you are having that redness, heat, and pain, those are key markers, and I appreciate you saying them, Mary, but can it be diagnosed via telemedicine, Nasreen?
I haven't heard of that because I'm not sure, but what I would say is if you try it and you have a provider that you meet with often through telemedicine, you could always reach out to them, especially if they know your condition already. I think what sometimes the worry is that there's different types of antibiotics they can give you for treatment, and I don't think they would like to just, take it by visual. Sometimes they do like to feel it, see if it's progressing, where sometimes they'll do markings on your leg or your arm to see if it's progressing from where it initially started. And that's sometimes challenging to do through the telemedicine, although they are trying to do more and more that way for patients. So if there maybe is just a quick visible sign, I do know I work at a doctor's office, and we've had patients after surgery who've had infection, which is different than cellulitis, but they've shown their tissue over the video, and it's easy enough to see it's red and warm, and they can sometimes send in antibiotics for that. But I guess they can't tell it's warm, but if the patient says it's warm, but they can see that, and then they do a follow-up typically. So I'm not certain what your prescriber would be able to do, but there's no harm in asking.
Yeah. Amanda.
I just think I have a really good tip, and I think everyone needs to know, if you aren't sure if it's cellulitis or not, take a Sharpie, draw around the rash, take your phone, take a photo, because if it is cellulitis, it does spread fast. And then if it goes beyond the Sharpie mark, and you can also cross compare it to your photograph, you can see how it's spreading and progressing, and also it's time stamped, so it gives you a little bit more information when you do go see the doctor and or have a teleconference to kind of further back your story.
Great advice. Mary.
To the anonymous attendee who asked that question, I was terrified of cellulitis for the longest time. Of course, my dog is saying hi. And I felt like in a lot of ways I limited myself because I was scared that something was going to give me cellulitis, and I ended up getting it anyway. I took care of it and I was okay. So, yes, it is something to take very seriously, but I was diagnosed at 12 years old, and I feel like I regret not doing a lot of things because of this looming fear that I wish that I would have done.
That is such a great point, Mary, because in life, we can all choose to live by fear and shrink back, or to embrace life, knowing that there will always be challenges and the potential But, you know, if there is a what if bad, there's also a what if good. What if something wonderful happens instead of what if something bad happens? Speaking of something wonderful happening, Kelly Bell, you are speaking at the Ketogenic Solutions for Lipedema and Lymphedema in October. Lympha Press is proud to be a sponsor. We have a great partnership with Lipedema Simplified. As you know, the Optimal Plus is indicated for the treatment of lipedema. It was specifically created for lipedema. And so we partner with Lipedema Simplified all the time, and we're seeing so many people helped with the Optimal Plus. Kelly, what can you tell me? What are you going to be talking about, and how can people sign up?
I will be talking about lymphedema and how it affects my organs, which is usually not talked about very much, but it is something that I deal with every day, and I've dealt with every day for 16 years. So I'll be explaining to you why, like more depth about my case and what I do to manage it, why I don't wear compression garments, why they make my issues worse, because all my damage is in here. And how the Lympha Press actually is a very valuable tool for me. But yeah, like recently I will share this, that I just found out that it's actually affected my kidneys. So it's just something, but I will explain to you why and why that, and why I eat the way I eat and why I do what I do. But if you want to join me at the conference, I'll expand on my entire story.
You know what we'll do? We send the link with the recording out to everybody who has registered. And so we'll also send the link for how you can register to hear Kelly's story and all of the great content provided by Lipedema Simplified. In fact, I know Leslyn Keith, who is writing, and it's about to be released, an amazing book called The Lymphatic Code. She's actually on the webinar tonight. So hey, Leslyn Keith, we're honored and proud that you're with us. And we will send that link out so people can register for this amazing webinar. I want to do another poll question because, you know, when I finally learn how to do polls, I want to put them out there. So everybody weigh in on this one. Are you currently using Lympha Press to manage your condition? Yes, no, or another pneumatic compression pump? I just am interested to know who our audience is and if they are using the Lympha Press. The Lympha Press is proven to move the lymphatics. It is a great tool to manage your condition. And if we can help any of you manage your condition, we really want to. So 92% of the people that are on this call tonight are using Lympha Press. We love you. We hope you love your Lympha Press too. And those 8% who said no, get in touch with me after the webinar tonight, because I would totally love to talk to you. Stephanie Roach is out there tonight, and she found us through you, Amanda Sobey. She won one of your Lymphedema Awareness Month raffles. And now she has both a Lympha jacket and Lympha pants. You know, maybe those 92% out there who have a Lympha Press don't realize that we have a variety of garments that can go all the way through your lower extremity and your entire upper body up to the neck. It's amazing, these garments and what they can do to help reduce the swelling. So Stephanie Roach, your interview is going to go live on our YouTube channel soon. And I'll let you know as soon as Alexa Ercolano schedules it, because I just gave her the link. All right, Angela Jones, what's going on in your life? And tell me why tuna isn't just for salad.
Well, I am in North Carolina now battling the humidity, and I'm learning a new way to fight my my lipedema and my lymphedema, because I'm usually in Arizona, which has a very dry heat. So here I'm swollen. I got off the plane. The next morning I had 6 pounds of stuff that I didn't have when I left Arizona. So I'm just learning new techniques, like to keep the house really, really cool, which really helps a lot. Choosing a careful time of day to walk. And like Kelly, I'm finding out that compression is not necessarily my best friend. So I'm just trying to manage, and I'm eating North Carolina vegetables.
Yeah, North Carolina vegetables. I love it.
Yeah.
And that there was this strawberry gazpacho that you created too that makes me just really want to come over to your house for dinner.
Oh.
We got a bunch of questions coming in, but before we go to those questions, Catherine, I know you really had an important message about being your own advocate in your own voice from personal experience. Could you share that with us?
So something that I've seen happen, not only to me, but to others, is that if you have other pre-existing conditions besides lymphedema, or lymphedema is a pre-existing condition to something else, sometimes what can actually happen is they can think that this is something, a current medical condition is related to that particular diagnosis, instead of that your current diagnosis is totally separate. So it's super important that if you are not in agreement with a resultant answer that comes back, per se, from like a disability company or, you know, a doctor, you know, that you really open up and say something to them and really kind of explain to them the reason why. Because sometimes, you know, you can get that adjusted. And for me, that actually happened where it did get adjusted in a positive way for me. So I did see that somebody posted a question about, you know, if somebody doesn't believe that you have lymphedema because you're not swollen, you're not very swollen. That doesn't mean that that's not that you don't have it. It's just that you may not have the symptoms that that particular physician or therapist is used to seeing. Therefore, you need to really open up and explain to them that this is what you do and this is how you control it, in order to be able to come across to them as that you know, you're an advocate for yourself and you know what you need. And if you're not that type of person to be able to be upfront about it, then maybe have a caregiver or somebody else help you to bring that message across. I know for me, I was afraid to bring that message across until about like 6 or 7 years ago. And I regret not being upfront with people. And unfortunately, it led me to go down a road where I was getting constant infections because I was afraid to say something. And you can't be afraid to say something.
Really good point. Mary, jump in.
Another thing, so if you, you know, like Catherine was saying, it makes you a little bit nervous having that conversation, having that conflict, bring in some studies that show what, you know, wearing compression and using the pump can do. And, you know, you can also research and find other doctors and say, hey, this doctor is willing to talk to you about why this is lymphedema. Another thing you can do if the doctor requires it is there are some imaging tests that are done as well. So even if your legs are or your arms are smaller in size because of you taking care of them, it will still show the underlying issues with your lymphatic system.
Don't be afraid to speak up. You can be your own best advocate. Kelly, did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, with me being my truncal thing, like my lymphatics, I mean, my damage makes me look like I'm obese. I mean, I no longer carry a lot of lymph in my arms and legs because I manage it pretty well. But I actually had to fight. And then the fighting thing in my tag is really like, it's been a fight for 16 years. And so just like, if you believe something's going on, and I'll never forget when I finally got my lymphoscintigraphy, the head of radiology at Walter Reed came up, put his head on my shoulder and said, we're finally seeing what you've been trying to tell us.
Wow.
So never understand, you know, your body and fight. And again, if you want to hear the rest of my story, go to this, because I will be sharing a lot of what I fought and how it's impacted me emotionally and physically, and what I do to manage it.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that, because that's so true. Now, we did have some other questions come in on this topic of cellulitis, so I'm really glad we're addressing this tonight. One question came in: if you have cellulitis, does it mean you have lymphedema? Nasreen, can you speak to that? Or, I mean, are they always connected?
They're not always connected. Cellulitis is not always with lymphedema. Lymphedema is not always with cellulitis. They don't always go hand in hand, but like I was saying earlier, you are more susceptible to cellulitis if you have lymphedema. Definitely people have cellulitis without it. There are some people who maybe have had a little bit of swelling for a while. They think it's maybe more of a chronic venous insufficiency, then end up with cellulitis, then get diagnosed with lymphedema. And those are where people are like, oh, what came first, the chicken or the egg? who knows if maybe they had lymphedema the whole time. Getting back to what everybody was talking about earlier with the imaging tests, if people are unsure, there are lymphoscintigraphies and ICG lymphography that are good ways to actually know if you have lymphatic impairment, if there is anything going on with that. And that's more of a definitive way to know if you have the lymphedema, but they don't always go hand in hand, but it is always a good thing to look for. And I did see there was a comment about that redness could also be a blood clot. So that warmth, redness, so it is very important to go to the hospital or to see a medical professional if you are having any concerns.
Excellent. So follow-up question, can you talk about how the consistent use of pneumatic compression, Lympha press, pneumatic compression can prevent recurrent cellulitis? Can regular use help to prevent or at least decrease the recurrence?
So I have definitely seen studies and from all the pump companies and including Lympha. So I know that it really does work with that, but sometimes if the fluid stays stagnant there, we have these anchoring filaments, our lymphatic vessels that hold that fluid in place. Mm-hmm. And so if we know that that pump is filtering out the fluid, even if you're one of these people that refill if you're not able to wear garments afterwards, at least we know you're not having this stagnant fluid sitting there. Mm-hmm. And that's oftentimes the breeding ground for a lot of this infection. So if we can get that fluid moving and pumping out, there's less risk for this infection to happen.
Gotcha. I'm wondering, Kim, unfortunately, you've had way too many experiences managing your lymphedema and some really hard situations. Do you have any anecdotal words?
Yeah,
cellulitis issue?
A lot.
Yeah, I bet you do.
So I've had 8 separate episodes of infection from the year 2014 till my last one was in December of 2020. And honestly, for that whole 6-year period, I was under the assumption that it was cellulitis, but I've actually have gone back and read the reports more in depth and spoken to my lymphedema doctor, Dr. Chen at the Cleveland Clinic, and some other specialists here in Houston. And it was never cellulitis, but it was osteomyelitis, which is chronic infection of the bone. And when I start hearing everyone like earlier talk about some of those key symptoms of cellulitis, such as that warmness that you feel in the extremity, and Mary mentioned, like for her, when she's gotten it on her legs, it's very difficult to even walk. So when I've had episodes of osteomyelitis, it's the same symptoms. I mean, I don't have the redness of the skin, but I do feel that internal warmth. And Nasreen can speak on this from a clinical side, but most of the time when your extremities are warm, that's typically not a good sign. Your body's trying to fight something. So that was my way of knowing that something was wrong. And then I would even have my lymph nodes in my neck would feel swollen, almost kind of like if you've had strep throat or soreness throat. So, and it's very painful, and I don't mess around with it. Anytime I feel any of those symptoms, I immediately go to the hospital, because with osteomyelitis or cellulitis or really any chronic infection, time is of the essence. And that's not to scare you, that's to have a plan in place, a contingency plan in place, have a team that is familiar with your care, have some backup antibiotics on you that will hold you over in case, like now with COVID times, there's some hospital systems that have limited, capacity. So have some plan Bs in place that can, help get you through until you're like there into the hospital or wherever it's necessary to go. But all that to say, like Mary and like Catherine were talking about, it's very easy to have the looming fear of when's the next episode, right? Like that is something that really psychologically and emotionally played a big part in my life for the past 6 years. And honestly, it still kind of does. I just had a total knee replacement. So now if I have another episode of infection, I have to get an amputation. So, but I'm not going to let that fear of the unknown future impact all the things that I can control today, like wearing my compression garments, using my Lympha press pump, and maintaining that positive mental attitude, because that goes a long way as well.
So I love this roundtable because it's not baloney. These are people that I am honored to moderate who are walking the walk and living this life. And they are shining examples of how to approach not just your lymphedema, but your life in a positive way. So thank you for sharing that, Cam. And it's again, that's a two-sided coin. What if negative, but what if positive, thinking of all the wonderful things that could happen. Mary, I saw you sort of wanting to jump in there. You looked like veteran fighting lymphedema. So go ahead and
Yes.
Training.
Some doctors are okay with giving you an extra prescription form, which can be part of your contingency plan B, as Cam was saying. So especially, you know, as COVID's getting crazy, as the wait times are increasing, that might not be a bad idea to ask your provider, hey, can you write me a script, and, you know, I'll call you and we can set up an appointment, but that way I can get a hold of it, you know, before it gets a lot worse. I know a lot of doctors are okay with that.
excellent. So go ahead, Nasreen. And I also want to follow up with a question from the audience from Lisa Burtok about COVID, but please do jump in, Nasreen.
Just really quick, I was going to say, if you notice that you're having these recurrent infections over and over again, it's also good to get a specialist who's maybe an infectious disease specialist, because sometimes they may put you on a completely different course of antibiotics or maybe keep you on a low dose at all times. And it might be something that just really changes your life, you know, versus just going to the doctor and them not really knowing and kind of scratching their head and let's try this. So sometimes if you get in with the right doctor, and I feel like these infectious disease doctors really do know what they're looking at very well.
That is great advice. Amanda.
Sorry, on top of Nasreen, get rid of all of your old garments and bandages and get new ones. That's
Expand
it.
on that. Expand on that a little bit.
Depending on your cleanliness, skin can be stuck inside your garments. If you're not doing active cleanliness and active self-care and actually taking care of your garments, you don't actually want to, and they could possibly be just dirty garments that if you don't have the ability to change them frequently, if you're wearing 1 year, 2 year, 3-year-old garments, they might be the reason why you're getting the bacterial infection.
Thank you so much for saying that. And that's one of the features too of the Lympha press. It's so easy to clean. I realized you were talking about garments, compression garments. We're talking pneumatic compression, the Lympha press, but it is made of a material that you can wipe clean and disinfect, which is so important, especially when we're talking about these infections. This is a hot topic, literally. Go ahead, Catherine, and then I want to get back to the other questions.
So the one other thing is if you do get a cellulitis infection or some type of skin infection, before you utilize compression, please make sure that you contact your physician to verify that it is safe to use, because different doctors have different protocols. So you want to make sure that you're following your doctor's protocol on, am I at a point in which I can utilize my compression safely without spreading this infection into my bloodstream or someplace else within the body?
Absolutely correct. And Kelly, you even said at one point early on in the program that you are very, you have a different approach when it comes to compression garments because they don't actually help you. Your Lympha press helps you, but the compression garments exacerbate your condition. So it's not one size fits all for anyone out there. And we want to always say we're not offering any medical advice, but these are people walking the walk and they've learned a whole lot. And there was a lot of chatter too, Angela, with your comment about compression garments and the heat. And you made the distinction in chat that I think everybody should hear, which is you weren't talking about avoiding
the pneumatic compression. I wasn't talking about that. I meant compression leggings and garments.
Yeah.
Not the Lympha press.
Gotcha. All right. So Lisa Burtok, we appreciate the candor of your question. And I'm going to yield to the medical professional that's on our panel here, but also the personal stories of the people on our panel. And we understand this is a very personal thing, but Lisa has not gotten the COVID vaccine. She is afraid it will worsen her lymphedema as well as her fibromyalgia. So there's that fear again we were talking about throughout the entire webinar tonight. You know, fear can hold you back and you can't live necessarily with that cloud of fear, but this is a very real question. She's concerned that the COVID vaccine will exacerbate and make her lymphedema and fibromyalgia worse. Now, Kelly, you were going to jump off of your seat there. So did you want to say something about that?
Yeah, I actually had the Moderna vaccination, and I can understand our concern because it does cause swelling and lymphedema. And as you guys know, I live in the lymphatic research world, and it does cause swelling and lymphedema in the lymphatic system. But I will be honest with you, it became like this choice, and like I'll be honest with you, I didn't have any like great issues. My son actually had more issues than I did, and I don't have any issues now from it. But I mean, we are the community that kind of has like, we don't get the choice. Like we have medical issues, and like I said, all this is damage to me. So I had the fibromyalgia and stuff, and so it's not. It was not a big deal. Like it was not as big a deal as I thought it was going to be. It was really, that's why I passed it on here when I was talking.
Gotcha. Anybody else want to share from their experience? Go ahead, Alexa.
Sure. I got the Pfizer vaccine, but I know that a lot of the leading lymphatic organizations have in their official statement said, you know, as long as you avoid getting it in your affected limbs, like if you have lymphedema in your arms, for example, they recommend getting it in your thigh or something like that. It's not going to trigger your, or worsen rather, your lymphedema. So it's completely safe if that's what you choose to do. I would defer to Nasreen, of course, as the medical professional on the call, but that's my understanding and what some of the organizations have said as well.
Excellent. I'm so glad you shared that. Anybody else want to speak? And Nasreen, I'd love to hear from you.
You know, I agree that that is what I've read, but I definitely have had patients who have had lymphedema come about after having the vaccines, even if they use their non-affected limbs. I've had patients who have a history of, you know, swelling in their legs end up after getting the vaccine in their arm. So it is a concern. Now you have to think, if you do want to get the vaccine, we had all of these patients who had concerns prior meet with us. We came up with a game plan beforehand about how you are going to really amp up your lymphedema regimen prior, because we know your lymphatic system is going to be working overtime. So they were maybe doing more manual lymph drainage or using their pumps more, or maybe layering up on compression or whatever the case may be. So we really did meet with our patients if they did have concerns. So I would get in touch with your lymphedema therapist, or, you know, if you have a physician you see, and see if there's any suggestions they might have for you, because I think that worked really well for a lot of my patients.
Excellent. Good. All right. We're going to move on from this topic because, oh, wait, I see a hand. Catherine.
Real quick. So I also had the Pfizer like Alexa did. And as Nasreen said, I actually had planned to use my Lympha twice a day instead of just once a day, depending on the day. Because I had mine on the weekend, so I only typically use my Lympha once a day. And I upped that, and I didn't have any sort of extraneous swelling that I'm not used to, because I had upped. And that particular week, I made sure that because I was going for manual lymph drains, I went 3 times that week instead of twice, just to be on the cautious side the week before and the week after, just to make sure that I thought everything was okay. But if you have concerns, always contact your doctor too, because they'll be able to help you with your personal situation.
I love this theme of, it's almost like you were in training prior to getting the vaccine. Make sure that you were compressioned up and ready to go. And so good advice. Excellent. We had an interesting comment about working life for people with lymphedema. Now, pretty much everybody here is working. And congratulations, Catherine. I heard you just got a new job. So we are so proud and excited for you.
Thank you.
Now, I know Mary and Cam, especially, you are on the road a lot and on your feet a lot. But what's interesting is this person, anonymous attendee, we are so glad you're with us tonight, saying that they found a real benefit to being a remote person, not having to be out and about and be able to sit at a desk and without pain or swelling at the end of the day because they don't have to go into the office. Has anyone else found that teleworking? Oh, go ahead, Alexa, jump on in and then I'll go to you, Catherine.
I've had a bit of a mixed bag with it because on one hand, it's great because I'll wear my nighttime Solaris tribute garment as pants sometimes when I'm at my desk because it's so much more comfortable than sitting in my flat knit all day, or I can elevate more freely. But on the other hand, because I'm sitting all day at my last job, when I was in the office, I was getting up, I had a commute and this and that. So I was moving a lot more, even though it was a desk job. So it kind of ebbs and flows. It's really much more self-motivated, working from home in every way, but especially with maintaining my lymphedema too. So I have to be sure to kind of get moving a little bit. I've been doing more home workouts in the morning before I start my day just to kind of get it going. But yeah. I do like what anonymous attendee said, you do get a chance to sort of elevate and accommodate your lymphedema treatment to your work day, which is kind of a treat because in the regular office setting, it's a little harder to do that. And you can wear looser, more comfortable clothing too, which is a big plus.
And I love the fact that I can wear I have my sweatpants on.
Mm-hmm. All the time.
Who cares, right? I want to have a Lympha jammy kind of party one of these times because we're all on Zoom and it's all good. Catherine, what did you want to say about this remote work and the benefits?
So I did see the benefits in terms of when I was home. However, it was a little bit more challenging once March 1st came back and we went back into the school building. And then I went from sitting and being able to elevate my feet to the following week being on my feet for 8 hours a day. So my leg had to adjust. So that is one thing that I probably should have done a little bit before going back into the building was to start changing my position around a little bit more. So I was standing half the day and sitting half the day to get myself kind of geared up for we're going to sit for 8 hours, stand for 8 hours, because my leg wasn't used to it. So it kind of had a little bit of a extra swelling going on there. So it was like I had to adjust to, counteract that swelling.
So Amanda, you are a health coach. You've got gym equipment behind you. You recommend moving, right? So what would you like to say about this whole remote work sedentary question?
I think that everybody has to adjust to this illness, whether you're full-time on your feet, whether you have an office career. It is your responsibility to sit and do some calf pumps at your desk. If you have the flexibility to wear your garments and to elevate your legs, fit it in when you can. I do have the privilege to clearly work out all day long, which obviously helps my condition, but these are unusual circumstances. So I just think for people who are working, because I think the majority of us are actually working, you have to find a system that works for you. And that could be setting your clock every 2 hours to go for a walk or to go do some stairs. Or I know right now on Amazon, they have a desk that has a bike underneath. So it's just a matter of being creative and don't get overwhelmed with the responsibility to do self-care, but definitely try to fit it in and figure out what works for you.
And I will also add that Amanda does coaching virtually. So you could be at home and still get coached by the woman now known as Lymphy Queen. And can you just do a brief synopsis of why people can't find you at your old Instagram handle and why you have a new one now?
I wish I knew. Instagram, supposedly I'm still active on my old account, but I have zero accessibility. But I found that I'm watching so many people, and I apologize for the men that I've excluded, but I just see so many people and so many women especially getting up and thriving and being such fabulous examples. And I really hope that this new page embraces all these warriors and these thrivers. And I just hope that we get to just pollute it with just fabulous examples of people taking back their health and not just settling for second best. So I really hope to see some amazing stories and just other people's lifestyles on this page. And I'm happy to see you guys, and I'm happy to be back.
Awesome. At Lymphy Queen. Awesome. Mary Castleberg, someone asked, what is a good tool to assist in putting on compression garments? And you said, I want to answer that question live. So go for it.
Yes, I get this question at work all of the time. There are a couple of really great things that you can use. For one, there's donning gloves. So they look almost like dishwashing gloves. They have a texture and it really helps get a grip on the compression to be able to pull it up. There's a really great thing that I use for open-toed called an easy slide, and I will put the link in the chat for you guys. That basically helps the stocking just slide over the fabric instead of against your skin, and a lot more. So if you follow the website that I'm going to put in the link, you'll be able to see a bunch of different things that you can use.
Perfect. I have a question that you're going to fight over answering. Tammy Beatty. Tammy, we're so glad that you're out here tonight. Thank you for giving us an hour of your August. Does everyone who uses the Lympha Press use it daily? And can you use it twice a day? Go ahead, Kelly.
I actually 100% use it twice a day. And it's because it's the only pump. I mean, I've had a couple different ones. It's the only pump that actually helps me move the stuff through here. So yes, twice a day, 100%.
100%. What about, so should people, first of all, follow your doctor's advice. If your doctor has prescribed it 2 times a day, then you should use it 2 times a day. And managing lymphedema, I've heard some people say it's like brushing your teeth. You got to do it every day. And you can't take a day off because your lymphedema doesn't take a day off. Angela, are you pumping every day?
I pump twice a day. My physician's order was twice a day, and I can either do 60 minutes or 90 minutes. So I usually do in the morning time. I try to do it by 11. I don't get up until like 10 o'clock. But anyway, I try to do it by 11 for an hour, and then I do it like 6 to 8 hours later for another hour. And that seems to work. At one point, when I first came back here to North Carolina, I was doing 3 times a day because I can go up to 3 times a day, but I was able to drop that 3rd time.
Anybody else? Catherine, I see you nodding the whole way through. Go ahead.
Yeah, I use mine twice a day. And during the school year, when I'm actually teaching, I actually get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I put it on and then I go back to sleep. Because I put it on the wave mode, and I know we've talked about that before. And then at nighttime, I'll actually put it on the sequential mode. So this way, that really kind of helps me to get any excess fluid that has built up throughout the day, because it's pushing and it's keeping that garment inflated as it's going up the channels instead of just moving all the way through. So the morning is more of I call it my relaxation pump session, and my nighttime is my let's get the fluid out.
Gotcha. Anybody else want to talk about their protocol and using it every day? Go ahead, Nasreen.
So I don't use a pump, but when we use pumps with patients, the only thing that I'd say is we'll have patients use them up to 3 times a day if needed, but we just like them to at least have a window in between, since we're sending all that fluid up towards your heart, your kidneys. We don't want to inundate your internal organs with too much fluid at once, and we want to give your body a chance to process all that fluid in between. We typically tell patients about 3 hours in between your pumping. I'm not certain if that's what every physician says or what you guys say for your specific pump, but that's what we found has worked pretty safely for our patients.
Excellent. Someone mentioned, go ahead, Kelly.
As Nasreen says, like I battle with my internal organs because all of them are affected by this. One thing I have learned over this is like, I do not pump an hour to an hour and a half before going to sleep, because I literally have to help it with my breathing, because nothing that's made can help behind the chest, the rib cage. And I actually have damage back there. And so like, it's nice to hear a therapist to bring organs, because that's my biggest battle. I mean, that's what I battle today. So it's, yeah. So yeah, that was good. Like an hour before sleeping, if you think you may have damage or anything up here. Yeah.
Good point. One of you mentioned sequential, right? It was you, Catherine.
Yeah.
Some of our viewers may not understand what is sequential and what's unique about the Optimal Plus. The Lympha Press Optimal Plus is the most advanced pneumatic compression pump available. It has both sequential and peristaltic modes. And you might be sitting at home saying, what the heck is that? Who would like to answer that? Mary. But you're muted.
Okay. So sequential, basically what it's meaning is that it's going to hold the inflation. It'll start at the distal end, so your fingertips or your feet, and it's going to hold it all the way up. And then once it gets to the top, it'll deflate, and then it will cycle back through. One really great thing about that, like Catherine said, is it's pushing hard, getting all of that fluid up. Wave is when one chamber inflates, the next inflates, as the third inflates, the first deflates. So it's, an actual kind of wave or peristaltic. That is also really beneficial, and it can be a lot more comfortable. So any of the lipedema ladies out in the, out in the crowd tonight, it can really help you guys to achieve a higher pressure. The awesome thing about the Optimal Plus is you can do both, and you can also have your therapist talk to you about whether it'd be beneficial for you to manually adjust the pressures within your pump. So for me, for example, I am super, super fibrotic by nature. So I have my pump custom adjusted so that at the ankle, it's giving me a little bit extra. We can also do pre and post. So pre is going to open up your trunk, and post will kind of hit those problem spots once again.
And also unique about the now I can tell why you are a compression therapy consultant, Mary. My goodness, that was a great answer. But I'm going to go to my other compression therapy consultant, Cam, and say one of the other features is you can either isolate or deactivate a chamber, correct?
That is correct. And that's really awesome. Like for me personally, for those who've been on the roundtables over the past couple months. So when I had a total knee replacement, I could not wear my flat knit garments because I had staples and stitches in my knee. So I literally couldn't pull the garment up over that. But my lymphedema doesn't go away, right? So I still needed a way to compress my leg as best as I could. So with the Optimal Plus, utilizing the LymphaPress app that's free, and even on the console itself, you have the ability to block off individual chambers. So I was still able to get full compression and just skip some of those chambers that were located right over my surgical site. So that was really beneficial for me. And a lot of patients that I've seen, particularly breast cancer, upper extremity patients who may have some soreness or tenderness on a more proximal part, right? You can actually lower that pressure to accommodate, to make it more comfortable, because ultimately that's what we want. We want comfort. And I say this all the time. It's almost kind of like, Goldilocks and the Three Bears. We don't want it too tight. We don't want it too light. We want it just right. So find your pressure porridge with your therapist and with your physician, and that will make a world of difference.
Thank you for saying that, Cam. And we love that you had the optimal therapy to treat your condition after your surgery. And we're so glad that you're doing well. We are like 2 minutes before they're going to take the hook and shut us down here tonight. But we have a special person out there, Julia Barefoot. What a great name. Julia Barefoot has been in chat, and she's been on the webinar all evening, and she is going to be 87 years old on August 22nd. So we applaud you, Julia Barefoot. She says she loves her LymphaPress, wouldn't be without it. And we are honored that you joined us tonight. So we can't really sing to you, but we do say happy birthday to you. And to everybody out there, we're sending you lots of love, lots of support. LymphaPress is here for you long after you get your pump. We're here to support you. We are a community of people that will link arms and encourage you. Does anybody have any great last words before we sign off for the night?
Keep fighting.
Keep fighting. All right, everybody, you gonna fight with me? Come on, Catherine, fight. Yes. All right, we're fighting.
Come on, Nasreen, I saw that.
And
there you go.
And we thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you, wonderful panelists. I adore you. And we will see you next month at the Lymphedema Patient Roundtable. Have a great night, everybody.